Polyp works here. I think Nami is a fish. Well, 1/4 fishman to be exact. Let's talk about it. So, in One Piece, I don't think there are jokes per se, just funny explanations. One of these funny explanations comes to us in the form of a doodle. This doodle is shown to us in chapter 69. Yeah, so it's a joke within a very interesting number chapter, but I digress. Luffy draws a fish, where the group of him, Sanji, and Yosaku are discussing the nature of Nami and what she has to do with the Fishman Pirates, because this takes place during the All Park arc, okay? So, Sanji fantasizes that Nami is a mermaid. Luffy has a different opinion, as his fish doodle is then depicted with hair with Nami's name written on it to reflect that she is a reverse mermaid, or in this situation, that would mean she would be a fishman. What's so interesting about this one doodle is that how persistent it is throughout the story. Because way later, during the Fishman Island arc, this doodle is a canonical character in the crowd of various fish people, I believe during the Otahime flashback. Then again, in One Piece magazine, volume 14, Luffy is depicted drawing all the current Straw Hats. What's interesting about this is that the Frankie doodle that we see back at the start of Water 7 actually gets updated to reflect his post-time skip design. However, the Nami doodle that he does in chapter 69 actually stays consistent because it looks exactly the same here in a piece of material that reflects all the changes from the post-time skip that it did in the pre-time skip. So the doodle remains the same. This is very interesting. Now, another thing that we see in Water 7 is that there are such things as 1/4 fishmen, or 1/4 mermaids in her case. I'm talking about Chimney, the granddaughter of Konkoro, who runs the train station, okay? So, we find out that she is 1/4 mermaid. And in being 1/4 mermaid, she doesn't really outwardly have any substantial fishman traits, because we've seen half fishmen before. We saw one of these guys way back in Logtown, actually. He's the guy who, I believe his name is Sappy. He sells Sanji the fish, right? So we've seen half-breeds before, but Chimney is our first 1/4 of another race. So one can surmise that as things go down the bloodline, they get further and further muddled, even though we don't see them. Kokoro does say that she had relations with a human, so her son would be a half mermaid, or just a half mer person, and then he has a daughter with another human, which is Chimney, who is 1/4 mermaid. Moving on, what's interesting about this is that I think some abilities that Nami has as a 1/4 fishman could be reflected in how she's acted in the manga so far. So her weather prediction ability could be related to her fish heritage, because we do see in Madame Charlie, our long sister, and we kind of see this in Otahime, who is just very skilled with observation hockey, that premonition does sort of run deep with fish people ever so often. Also, there's the aspect of super strength that we'll get into later. But I think Nami's ability to predict the weather coincides with her fishman heritage because of the theme of prediction that we have with Madame Shirley and with Otahime. And then two, what's interesting about that is we know that certain abilities are specific to mermaids and fishmen. However, thanks to Jinbei, who is also brought up in chapter 69 for the first time, with Jinbei's ability to summon fish by calling them, we know that some abilities aren't mutually exclusive to one side of the sea-dwelling race or the other, because for the most part, that is a mermaid ability, but here's a fishman using it. Those abilities aren't exclusive. There are only two that are mutually exclusive to merfolk and fishmen. Fishmen are known to be 10 times stronger than humans, so they have the super strength, whereas mermaids or just merfolk are known as the faster swimmers. So merfolk have the speed underwater, where fishmen are known for super strength. So those abilities are mutually exclusive, but anything else, like sort of like prediction or premonition, really isn't. So I said to say Nami as a 1/4 fishman could be the reason why she has the ability to predict the weather. Another thing, how did her parents end up in the East Blue? Well, we know from way back in Wano that fishmen do end up anywhere and everywhere and can befall very unfortunate circumstances if left on their own, because Kawamatsu's mother was a fishman who was trying to protect her son, but she befell prejudice because the residents of the island thought she was a monster, so they did away with her, and Kawamatsu was left on his own. So I say that to say the same thing could have happened potentially to Nami's mother when Belle-Mère found baby Nami and Nojiko in the conflict of Nami's birthplace, or where she was found, which was the Oika Kingdom, which is just Tokyo spelled backwards. I did not know that until I started researching this video, so that's pretty cool. But anyway, the Oika Kingdom is a kingdom in the East Blue that was attacked by pirates, and of course Belle-Mère was involved in this conflict, and that's where she found Nami and Nojiko. So, much like Kawamatsu, I think Nami's mother or father was a half fishman who bared a child with a human, and then they were living in the East Blue, but then got caught up and perhaps perished in this conflict. And that's where Nojiko found Nami, and then both of them were found by Belle-Mère. So, moving off of that, let's talk about Nami's super strength. I think Nami is a latent superhuman, and that could be from her fishman heritage. So, the reason why I bring this up is because with race mixing, some things seem to come to the surface while other things stay dormant. And we have an example of this in, say, a lot of half-breeds, like Big Pan, who is part giant and part fishman. He's got slippery skin of a fishman, but is also the size of a giant. And then we have Chimney, who doesn't really display any outstanding traits at all. So with Nami, you could make the connection that she might have superhuman abilities because of her heritage. The reason why I say this is because of a very interesting turn of events that happened during Punk Hazard. We have various Straw Hats get their soul swapped by Law via the use of his op-op abilities. In this switcheroo, we have Sanji at one point in the body of Nami. Circumstances of the arc lead to Sanji having to perform Blue Walk in Nami's body. Now, to break things down about this, because I've heard some discrepancy about this situation over the years. Haki is connected to the soul or the will of an individual. The soul / mind / will of individuals were the things that were being swapped around via the use of the op-op fruit. Things such as physical strength or Del Fruit abilities are solely tethered to the body of an individual. And we know this to be true for a variety of reasons, but the most obvious reason is Brook. In order for Brook's powers to work, he had to find his original body as a soul while wandering the Florane Triangle. So the Devil Fruit contract was not shown as a success until his soul found his body. Therefore, he is tethered to his body. We see this too during the post-time skip when he does astral project. The weird little ghost is still connected to his body. It's not so much an anchor because he seems to be able to move freely for an undeterminate distance, but he is still connected to his body. With that being said, Nami being able to perform blue walk shows that she has a degree of super strength. And we know blue walk is specifically super strength based because it's just an underwater variant of moonwalk or Geppo, which is a CP9 technique, one of these 6 powers. And in chapter 348, it is explained that with the strength in the CP9 members' legs, they are so strong that they can push off of cushions of air to stay afloat. So this is solely a superhuman feat. Much like the majority of the 6 powers, honestly, the only one that's not related to super strength is paper arts, which is the one where you're moving and dodging like paper. So this is Nami's body performing a superhuman feat by using a technique that requires super strength. What's so interesting too about this technique in particular is that when Sanji first performs it during the start of Fishman Island, it is compared to the swimming speed of a fishman by Usopp and Chopper. So we have Nami performing a superhuman feat to obtain the swimming speed of a fishman. Seems a bit too coincidental, even if it's Sanji doing it in Nami's body. Nami's body was also able to deliver a kick strong enough to force a shark to release Kinemon's body part. So that's another very interesting feat of some super strength there. Now, in terms of narrative, this creates something very interesting for Nami and Arlong. This means that potentially Arlong enslaved a fishman to meet his own goals and devices, not unlike how humans have fishmen and human slaves to serve them. So he is no better than the people that he despises, which is really interesting. And then you have the line about him thinking Nami is a human, but better than most humans because of all the wealth that he can potentially make off of her, which again is kind of funny because in this situation, she would be a sister to him, in a sense, a sister in like race relations. So it all boils down to Arlong being extraordinarily ignorant on an entirely different level. Also, you can say too that he ends up branding a child with a mark of servitude because even though the Arlong pirate symbol is sort of like a symbol to show that you're part of the group, in Nami's situation, it was to be a mark of servitude. Kind of like how a sun tattoo is supposed to be an inversion of the celestial dragon mark, which it is not lost on me that this too would make Nami the complete inverse of Koala, because while she shows off her redesigned mark of slavery into a mark of strength, being the pinwheel and the orange to represent her father and mother, also with her being a fishman, even though she's 1/4 fishman, a fishman nonetheless, enslaved by other fishmen, but for the most part raised by humans. Koala, a former slave of humans, then raised by fishmen for the most part, because she was brought up by the Sun Pirates a little bit, and then spent some time with her mother, and then was taught fishman karate, most likely by Hack when she joined the Revolutionary Army at some point. She hides her sun branding, even though the Sun Pirates branding is a positive symbol. It's not a symbol of slavery, it's a symbol of freedom. So it's weird that one hid a symbol of slavery to turn it into a symbol of freedom, but then one hides a symbol of freedom that was once a symbol of slavery. So I find that very interesting between Nami and Koala in the narrative. To put another narrative spin on things, I think it's very interesting just how involved Nami and Sanji have been in each other's storylines, much like how Sanji was the one to surmise what Nami's relation is to the fishman by mentally depicting her as a mermaid, or how Nami pointed out how weird it was that Sanji was from the North Blue, which later comes to a head in Whole Cake Island, of which she was a big part of. So much just like how Sanji's latent durability and super strength were awakened by the raid suit, I think it's going to come to a head just how weird Nami is and how her latent super strength has been awakened by her adventures on the seas, how her fisherman heritage has eventually come to a head. Because now nobody knows Nami better than Sanji, as he spent some time in her body thanks to the powers of the Op fruit. But with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Give me your thoughts. If you like stuff like this, please feel free to check out my YouTube channel, P Works. And if you like what you see, I would appreciate your subscription. Thank you so much. See you next time.